I met Abby 20 years ago, and when I did the initial meet the parents, Abby's dad said, I know, let's take Tom to Halecat. It's this slightly unusual falling apart nursery. Fast forward, my father-in-law spotted a Halecat nursery, lease available, with a phone number. He phoned us up, and we'd only been here a few months before and had driven away saying, what, it's so far gone now, you'd be an idiot to take it on, kind of thing. And then he told us this, and we leapt to the phone. I'm doing the classic thing. I'm talking about plants we don't really sell. I'm such a crap businessman.
Hello and welcome to episode 84 of Talking Dirty. Over at East Ruston Old Vicarage, I think looking like he's escaped from some Mediterranean holiday. Very, very tanned and looking like he's sort of maybe a bit hot under the collar. We have our happy and handsome horticulturist, Alan Edward Herbert Gray.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's not hot under the collar, but it's hot. And, you do actually pick up the sun quite a bit when you're working outside an awful lot. And at this time of the year, it's quite strong, hence the color. No additives.
He's not been on a sunbed.
Over in good old Sproston at her mother's house, we have Thordis Maria, Sophia, Fredrickson. And I love the chair. I want you to get up a minute. I want to see the pattern on the chair.
I want to get out of the way.
Yes, it's fantastic. Look at that.
Very nice. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, very good. You know what? I think this was a bedspread that we customized into a chair cover. I do. It's one of those reclining chairs, though. I feel like I want to do the podcast back here. And I've got a supporting cast of many aces, all of which varieties I've forgotten, but never mind. We'll move on. You can't really see them in detail.
Well, it looks lovely. It looks very jungly.
Yes.
And secret and all the things that it's an enchanting secret garden at Thordis's mum's house.
It is. Actually, our guest this week has visited this particular garden many moons ago because Ian Scott Roofe is one of our best friends, our original Get Gardening co-conspirator. We've finally pinned you down to another date. You're one of the busiest men around, always working, always busy.
I've been wheeled off the subs bench. I've been dragged out of the freezer where I'm kept when I'm not needed for this. Cryogenically frozen just for these occasions, and I'm here.
Is that why you always look so young, Ian? Is because
you're very talking of looking young. Alan's looking young. That portrait up in the loft must be,
more handsome by the week, Alan Gray.
We all know about Dorian Gray, but Alan Gray, that's a different matter.
That's obviously it. He's just changed his first name. So, Ian, I cannot even remember when it was that we last caught up with you on Talking Dirty. How the devil have you been keeping? I'm
very well, thank you very well. It's been great. It's been a while, but it doesn't matter because you've had some wonderful people on this podcast every single week. It's been absolutely brilliant. I don't know how you guys do it, producing this every single week. So I've been listening to a lot of Talking Dirty, which is always good. And lots of gardening, lots of planting, lots of watering. Yeah, it's been pretty good, actually. And my little garden out here in South Walsham is really coming on. It's really filling up with things, actually. It's amazing how you plant things really small. And I found some pictures of when, during lockdown, I just sort of planted the garden up that autumn before, and I got lots of bare soil between things. And looking now, everywhere's just full. Things have seeded in. It's amazing how you forget how, I thought to myself, it'll never get to anything. And the trellises are full, and there's Holboellia in flower, and there's all sorts of things. I must have 50 or 60 climbers on the fences just going round, because we always talk about this, but I just love covering fences and walls and things. I just think it's great, and it provides such wonderful habitat. So that's been really nice to see, actually. And I'm really sort of lucky that I've created this little piece of, it's my own Eden, really. It's very small. You could fit it probably 200 times into Alan's garden. And I do crave acres, but it's nice, it's nice. I when I get home, I lock the gate and I'm in my own little world for a bit. And it's, I can do what I like in it rather than sort of, having to, liaise with other people, which is quite nice.
Oh, hermitage is the best. I've realised this is the first podcast, I think, where we're all in the same county. Because I'm in Norfolk.
Yeah.
I'm in Norfolk. It makes no difference to anyone else. But it's quite nice. Yeah. And you're I mean, this isn't a big garden, but this is probably the plot's 100 foot, which is, sizable compared to what a lot of people garden, certainly what I garden in Cambridge. And how big is your garden at home, Ian?
It must be 30 feet by 15. So it's pretty small, to be honest, but I've crammed a lot in. I've got 5 trees in it as well. Sorbus, Crataegus perinifolia. I've got 2 Sorbus actually. I've got Cladrastus.
I daren't say it.
Go on.
That's the size of my drawing room.
There we are. My garden is the same size as your drawing room. Yeah, there we are. And it's it's good though. It's good.
But you just given me an idea, Ian.
You're going to plant up the drawing room.
Take the roof off and put a glass one on. No, I was just thinking, when Ian was talking about, how he loves to cover the fence and everything else, and I was just thinking, well, you really don't need a fence in a way. I mean, you do if you want some privacy, but if you're fencing off a piece of garden and everything. I said this to Graham the other day. Wouldn't it be rather nice somewhere in this garden to make a stretch, say 100 feet long, of nothing but wisteria?
Oh, goodness, yeah.
But the trouble is, I'm like you, Ian. I want to grow more than just one thing. Like, you discipline yourself to do that. I mean, we have fences of espaliered apples, for instance, things like that. But I mean, if you actually think about it, you could actually do some fabulous things with large fences with a single subject, a single variety on it.
You've got a new fence, Al. You could do something with that.
Yes, true.
It probably is 100 foot, your new fence. It'd be ideal for wisteria.
The cogs are whirring. I mean, wisteria at this time of year, anyone who doesn't have it, me included, extreme wisteria envy. And obviously it stands out wherever you're walking or driving, you tend to see them. And I love how it's almost catching that if one person in an area grows a really great wisteria, everybody else wants to copy them. So you'll see wisterias of varying ages, and there'll probably be one really old one and then lots of sort of decreasingly aged ones where people have cottoned on to how glorious they can look.
They are wonderful, aren't they? But I also think to myself, they are wonderful things and the scent is great and the flowers are great. But part of me thinks, for that sort of window of flower and the amount of work you've got to do, is it really the plant you would have if you only have one? So I agree with that. I mean, a fence them is spectacular, and I'm always envious of the fact he's got the space to do that. But I think the amount of times through the year you've got to cut all the tendrils back, you've got to do the dead wood out, you've got to check your wires, you've got to train it in, you've got to trim it back again, and then you've got to do it a bit later in the season, and then just before Christmas you might do it again. So it keeps growing and growing, and then you get how many weeks of flowers, Al, do you think, for a good wisteria?
3 or 4, I suppose.
Yeah. But
then you do sometimes get that bonus crop in the autumn, don't you?
Yeah, that's true.
Which is nice. But I mean, you're almost putting me off the idea, Ian. I have to
don't, because I think it's a wonderful idea. And I was thinking that you've got some in your mid garden. I think you've got Black Dragon that might be coming out at the minute, that lovely double, which is just wonderful. And I think there's Macrobotrytis somewhere as well. And they're just now gradually, for years, they haven't, I don't think we've ever got round to training them into the huge, great wooden structures, the sort of pergola sides that run down Alan's med garden. And last year the boys spent a good few hours up ladders each side tying all these lengths in, and we're now halfway along.
That really pays off, actually, doesn't it?
It does, because then you get these whole columns that just drip with wisteria flowers, and it is a job. I know I said about the cutting, but there is something spectacular about it. I mean, there is.
I think one of the things about wisteria is when the tendrils start to, then they put the new buds out, but not the buds that flowers, but the new branches out. They grow, 2-3 meters easily. And they start whipping you in the face and all the rest of it. And if you read the books, they tell you prune it twice. You prune it a summer prune and then an autumn prune. But I think, to be quite honest, I just go cutting it back whenever I pass, whenever I see it. And when it gets in my way, for instance. There's one wisteria here that you haven't mentioned that I don't know whether you'd like it or not. I've always been of the opinion that I don't like it. And I looked at it today and it's flowering now. It's on the fence and the archway just coming out of the veg garden.
Oh yes, no, it's a very, very delicate, very
it's a variety called lipstick. I mean, horrible name.
Yeah.
And it is the sort of the palest creamy pink with a tiny little dark pink heart to the flower, I suppose. I took photographs of it today, Thunder, so you can have some.
Good. I've got to be honest, it doesn't sound like one I'd pick.
It is nice, actually.
It was a gift to me from a nursery man just as he was giving up. giving up his nursery. Roger from Swarston. I don't know whether you ever knew him, Ian. Roger and Pat. No. Oh, well. Anyway, he came over and he gave it to me. He said, it's a new one. You try it and see what you like. See whether you like it or not. And I've never liked it, but I've never dared say because I didn't want to offend him.
Done it now.
Well, I looked at it today and I actually thought, yeah, I've grown into you. You're quite nice.
Yeah, there is something delicate about there. The way the ends of those racines, they peter away and become very long rather than being sort of quite dumpy. They're really lovely. But I was thinking the National Collection holder, I think it's based in Kent for Wisteria, he grows all his as standards, like an orchard. And I was thinking if people don't have walls and fences, then Wisteria do make fantastic standards if you can get a good stake in for them and take them up and trim those tops back and keep cutting it for the first few years to get a good structure. They just look spectacular because those blooms just drip off them like the most wonderful sort of design on a Japanese plate or something, you know.
I've often thought of doing that. I've not got round to it. And I think for me, wisteria is something I definitely want to buy in flower because there are certain ones I see and I just think, no, that'd be too wishy-washy. And I mean, like the white one, I wouldn't necessarily think I'd be drawn to, but actually when you see it in flower, they can be so graceful and ephemeral and beautiful. So I think I'd need to sort of really work out, if I could only have one and train it as a standard, I need to be fairly confident on which one I want.
You don't want one, you want a row.
Right. An avenue, imagine an avenue of standards of wisteria. That'd look spectacular, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
Just fill my whole garden.
In actual fact, I think it's not a bad idea because after a while, it's a bit like bonsaiing a plant, isn't it? Because after a while, they would actually become like living sculptures.
Yeah, they get gnarly.
That gnarly, yeah, absolutely. Full of lovely shapes.
And I was thinking, actually, I said about pruning, but with standards, you could probably just prune them like that old boy told you to prune the apple tree. That you're not sure how to prune an apple tree, you run a pair of shears over it. Well, with wisteria, you could really do the same. As long as you're not too hard with it, just run a pair of shears round it to clip it, and you're going to leave some stubs and some spurs, and it's probably going to be one of the easiest ways to do a standard.
Ooh, I am feeling inspired now. What a wonderful wisteria revelry.
Ah, lovely. Yeah, good.
We haven't even got on to show and tell yet. Ian, what have you brought along?
I had a little walk through, we've got some nice bluebell woods up here, which I drove past in my truck quite regularly and didn't get a chance to go in. This wasn't from the bluebell wood, but I thought I'd go and have a look because I was trying to see if there might be anything quirky that might have appeared, but there wasn't. In 3 acres of wonderful bluebell wood, there were 2 white bluebells. That's the only sort of genetic mutation there was. But this is a lovely bracteate form. I really like these Hyacinthoides non-scriptus Bracteatus form, and I think Alan's started growing some of these, haven't you? We got from the same people. We've had them from Richard Hobbs and Joe Sharman do them, and they really are wonderful. Ben Potterton grows them as well, who some of you will know, but they are just such obscure things. You get this wonderful pale blue flower. I suspect probably they've got a little bit of the Spanish bluebell in them, to be honest, because the way they're structured. And you've got this genetic mutation where if you look at a bluebell flower anyway, it has these tiny little stipules that come out of, these little green bits here. They're on original bluebells, like little sort of purple stipules. But here, this mutation has caused these stipules to become almost sort of leaf-like, to become like leaf-like structures, and you get this wonderful weird head on them. Now I've got a clump of these in the garden which is making up quite slow, and I got them from Richard, and there's a white form as well.
You got a white one? I grow the white one. Yeah, we call them hairy bells.
Hairy bells.
Say that, please.
What do you think of them? Do you like them?
I do like them, yes, I do like them, but I rather feel you've got a couple of little clumps and they are gradual, they're very slow. And I think, the trouble is when you buy these from somebody who's a specialist, they don't have more than a couple of pots for sale. But I'd like to go somewhere and be able to buy 10 pots. Yeah, it'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Did Annie Guilfoyle talk about these as well on hers? Was she? Okay, yeah.
Hairy bells, one of the many things from the Annie Guilfoyle podcast that we couldn't Google without being worried about the results.
Yeah, it's always a bad way to find out things, but really lovely. And it's in part shade, it's just in amongst other things, and it comes up, it does its thing, and I think it's a really quirky plant to have, so that's particularly lovely. It's still tulip season, obviously, which is lovely. Alan, you've got lots of wonderful tulips. Every year I buy lots of, I think new to me, interesting tulips, and I give them all to mum and dad for Christmas as part of their Christmas present, and they get to plant these wonderful pots up around theirs. And there's quite a long stem on this, and this is Amber Glow, which came from that well-known bulb retailer who has associations with Sissinghurst. Sarah Raven. There's no denying it, and I'm always lulled in, and it's absolutely lovely. I didn't think it was going to be this good, but the blooms are huge. I've got this wonderful dark sort of burgundy at the top, petering through, and I'm wondering if the initial colour of this, before it was taken as a variety, may have been virus that was running through it at some point, but it fades this wonderful, rich yellow at the bottom. And it is just a cracking tulip, I think. It's doing really well in some large galvanised planters, Mum and Dad, really tall galvanised long toms at the moment. It looks lovely. And it's combined with Continental, this wonderful tulip here. And I say to everybody, I'm always drawn to these wonderful dark colours. And I think they just look fantastic this time of year, and they're combining together really, really beautifully. So I'm going to see if we can keep these going for next year. Mum and Dad do like to keep their tulips going. And what we tend to do is we tend to lift them once they finish flowering. And Roofe, my dad, he tends to lay them in crates, black bulb crates, in the greenhouses. And we just bake them through the summer. They just sit on the greenhouse benches all summer long, and they bake. And then they get cleaned up, and then they get planted back again, usually about, it'll be this December they get put back in. And we find we get really good results from that. I know not everyone can do that, and everyone won't want to do that. But when we get certain cultivars we really like, I will occasionally buy them again. But it's quite nice to see what the results are, to see if that baking does make a difference. And 9 times out of 10 it does. You know, they just roast quite happily, and it's a great thing to use. We're not fussy about compost. We just use a 50-50 mix of a peat-free multi-purpose with a nice topsoil in. I'm steering clear of John Innes only because it contains peat. So I'm trying to use topsoil when I do my compost mixes now, guaranteeing that I haven't got any peat in there. And it's a tricky thing. And I was chatting to Stephen at Goose Green this morning about compost, and it's a bit of a nightmare for growers knowing what to do and where to go with it. And there's a lot of rubbish out there in terms of compost. We were both agreeing that topsoil as an addition to peat-free compost is a very good thing, because it helps to stabilize them. It means they don't dry out so much, they don't lose their nutrients so quickly. And the worry for growers is that it's all very well using peat-free for them, but they have to put so much fertilizer in to compensate that. The fertilizer bills are high, and the nitrates that go into the watercourses are a bit of a concern as well. So we're agreeing that topsoil is a good mix. So a few bulbs there as well.
Well, for anybody out there that has molehills in your garden, now don't waste them. Use them to mix in with your peat-free compost.
Yeah. And it's wonderful stuff. It's got no stones in it. The moles have churned it, and it's just wonderful friable mixture. That's a great old tradition, isn't it? The old head gardeners used to do that. They'd send the garden boy out to get molehills to use for using the potting mixes for the greenhouses.
I was quite tempted to pinch some the other day. Where my mum keeps her ponies, there's a lovely farm garden, cottage garden, and they had a mole outside their front gate right by the paddock. And I thought, oh, if only I had something with me,
that soil,
I could pinch those molehills. Actually, the other thing I was thinking as I stood at that gate is she had a lovely clump of Doll's Minuet, the tulip, which beautiful. I don't really go for strong pink tulips for some reason, but certainly combining with the oranges and the sort of, probably a bit like your Continental, the sort of dark burgundies that she had, that shocking pink in a really lovely strong clump was rather eye-catching.
The more I grow plants, the longer I garden, I do think that the colour, you can get away with so much. And, you know, I think probably working for Alan at East Ruston as well is just seeing that, you know, you can just mix colours that the books would say, oh, you know, you mustn't do that, but you can mix them. And because you've got green as a foil, they work. I mean, you know, and I think just try it. And if it doesn't work, well, we'll take it out and we'll move that sort and put something new in. I think that's, you know, I think, Al, that's the way to do it, isn't it? Just keep going.
I entirely agree with you. And I think the thing is, it's not for everybody, and that's quite all right, because we shouldn't all like the same things. But I mean, you know, we mix our, when you know, you do it. We mix our colour schemes up with tulips. We have soft palettes, and we have loud and brash and shrieking chaparelli pink with bright orange and all the rest of it. But all of those things, actually, they all mean something to somebody. I mean, somebody said to me in the garden yesterday, there's 3 double tulips, a bright yellow, a bright orange, and a white. Well, I would never have put white with those, but doesn't it look wonderful?
Yeah.
No, it's just...
It makes it such a fresh, zesty mix, doesn't it? It makes me think of sort of like wonderful, fresh, zesty sort of oranges, lemons, and limes, and you know, that sort of thing.
The tulips in the bed outside my potting shed, somebody said to me they look just like a Rembrandt painting.
Well, they're a Rembrandt mix. That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
And talking of marmitey things, I saw you post that Lunaria Somerset Marble,
Somerset
Alan,
Marble, yeah.
which, I mean, when I first saw the seedlings and, you know, bought little babies for sale, I was already excited about them. But every year, like I just love it more and more. And once those honesty, the sort of lovely, bright pinky purple honesty flowers come out against that pink variegated foliage, I know it's probably a real Marmite plant, but I think it's a showstopper.
I think it's the epitome of strong taste, not bad taste, strong taste. And I love it. And I mean, the amount of people that have come to me and said, what's the name of that honesty? I've got to have it. What is it? Where did you get it from? You know, and all this. It is a lovely, lovely thing. It's different. And at this time of the year, when there's not huge amounts of colour, especially in woodland areas where that likes to grow, you can have a patch of that on its own and it just sings. Yeah. And it sings in highest notes ever, providing you put Smyrnium perfoliatum with it, with that yellow flower head. It's lovely.
That's like to go full music. I can't remember much from my music degree, but I think it would be like a coloratura soprano, like all the twiddles and the high notes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah,
it's beautiful. Beautiful. I've only got Lunaria annua in mine. I did have some named cultivars, but just Lunaria annua is the dominant one now. But it links to what you say. It's just wonderful. You know that, and I've got it with. It's quite near this lovely gold. This gold flowered Helleborus foetidus, which is Hohenbroek's gold, which is absolutely lovely. I think you've got that.
I think I've got that. It's fab, isn't it?
And it's good. And that with just the Lunaria, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that.
You know, it's sort of like what I was talking about with that, you know, that Smyrnium, that sort of yellow and that sulphur and that lime. They really just mean. And you could easily put orange with this, and because you've got that yellow and that lime, the orange and the purple wouldn't look out of place together, would they? It'd really be a very sort of, you know, a very pleasing mix, I think. But Alan and I, we were talking about Lunarias this week and saying the wonderful range there are with that lovely Chedglow with its dark, rich burgundy foliage, and obviously Somerset Marble. And there's a lovely one called Corfu Blue, which has very pale mauve flowers. And that tends to sort of seed around quite nicely as well. And then you've got perennial forms like, you know, Lunaria rediviva, which is that wonderful, just simple sort of white, which is really nice as well.
Got that down the garden here.
Yeah, and there seems to be lots of new cultivars of these coming through. So I think it's a plant which we should just think of, it's just Lunaria, it's just seeding through. But actually, isn't it funny how we're now looking at this as actually a really valuable plant for schemes for this time of year in particular? It's funny how things go like that. Plants do come in and out of favour, don't they?
And I do think with honesty as well, that there can't be many of us who as children weren't obsessed with those lovely silver pennies. So then you get that whole nostalgia as well.
But I think this is a wonderful opening for somebody, you know, if people are worried about the cost of things, for instance. I mean, I saved seed, I think you sowed it in, and I pinched some of the plants that germinated and put them in a window box, and they look fantastic in a window box. I'm not a great fan of window boxes, but there's a window box on my laundry room. It's really to stop people being nosy and looking in.
We still do, Alan.
But it's got a slightly delicate fragrance that I think it's either Chedglow or Corfu Blue, I can't remember, but a very lovely light fragrance as you walk past. They're really great. Yeah, but
Blue, yeah.
The fragrance is just lovely.
What I was going to say, people are worried about the cost of things. You know, if you sow some honesty seed and you grow the plants on until you get nice fat plants in probably 1.5 2 litre pots, you could actually bed those out in a scheme for the following spring and interplant them with tulips. Or if you want to save your tulips, plant them behind the honesty. And you know, it's a plant, as you say, that is gaining value in people's minds, I think. I mean, once it used to be relegated to sort of somewhere where you know, near the dustbins or something.
Yeah, exactly. And here we are now using it, and you know, you and other top gardens in the country are using it for seasonal bedding displays, putting it on prime show rather than it's something that just appears in the corner where a field boundary joins the garden, for example. You know, that sort of thing. So that's lovely. I picked a few Erysimums as well, and I know I always talk about these, but they're such valuable plants. And this is one you would all know. It's been around a while now. It's Apricot Twist. I know, Thunder, you will love this because it's that wonderful, rich orange. But they're just so good for their long season of flowering. And more now I'm thinking about things as well which will cope with what appears to be our drier climate in the east. For me, it feels like this is the driest spring in a summer I've ever known. It's what it feels like. I don't know if it is, and I want to know. I need to keep better records, but I'm thinking of all these plants which will cope with dry conditions, and Erysimum will. And these are only a couple of pounds. I got them from a local DIY store, which is terrible, in the village, because I'm always looking for plants. And and also, isn't it amazing how many roadside stalls spring up this time of year, just little things that people are growing? It's all very exciting. But apricot twist is lovely, and all I do is, once it's finished flowering, just nip out these old flower heads, and it'll go on for a good 4 or 5 years quite happily. It's compact at about 45 centimeters. And I've also got Red Jep, which I've grown for a while now. I got that from Richard. I know it's one that Alan grows as well, which is just wonderful because it seeds. And what I'm finding when it's seeding, I haven't brought any of them with me, is I'm getting these wonderful mutations of flowers where I'm getting these striations, almost slightly psychedelic, with this wonderful rich red in, and then the sort of slightly faded mauve is appearing in there, sort of purple, and then I'm getting streaks of yellow in it as well. Are you finding that as well, Al? These sort of weird mutations in the second generations of plants. So they must be hybridizing with just normal everyday wallflowers, I think.
Exactly. We've got one in the front courtyard, which is just behind me, which we call Ruston Copper Knob. And I mean, that opens it, the most lovely sort of yellow apricot colour, and then it gradually fades to purple. So that you get purple on the bottom of the spike, going up through through shades of purple, red, orange, and then apricot on the top, apricot and yellow on the top. It is a stunning plant.
But I mean, there's a whole good range of these. There's a lot of new cultivars coming through, and it'll be interesting to see how well they perform. But I mean, good old favourites such as, Bowles Mauve, Lady Robra, Ruston Royal, one that you've got, Al, which is brilliant as well. Harpur Crewe, which is that most wonderful double yellow, which people always seem to overlook, but it's such a fantastic form, it really is. And obviously those lovely rich coppers coming through with Ruston Copper Knob, and there's a few other nice sort of rich oranges coming through as well, which are great plants, and they seem to be making them slightly more compact. Now, Bowles Mauve, Ruston Royal and Lady Robra are quite big plants. They can reach up to 3 feet across, can't they, over time?
Yeah,
so you need a bit of space. Ruston Copper Knob, what's that, about 2 feet across at the moment? After about 3 years,
it's about 3 feet across now.
So that's getting quite sizable as well.
It does make a nice sort of a comely dumpling, if you know what I mean. It doesn't split or anything like that. So it really is a worthwhile plant, I think.
And I think their foliage is nice in the winter as well. If you've got good perennial wallflowers that form that nice sort of slightly glaucous-y green dome, I think they're really welcome foliage in the winter, which is nice, which is really lovely.
And you can get some lovely combos as well. I'm not actually sure what I've got a wallflower in the front garden, just this one that I think, Alan, you sort of chucked my way when I was walking around the garden with you a couple of years back. And it's ended up next to a Centaurea, a lovely blue, like Montana, with Salvia Royal Bumble coming into flower. So you've just got this lovely cacophony of rich blue and red and the sort of purpley reds of the wallflower. And it's really lovely.
A bit of white in there, Thunder, you'd be really patriotic.
Yeah. Or put Centaurea Jordy with it as well.
That's
which is
lovely.
Another wonderful perennial cornflower. Really rich purple blooms on there. Came from Monk Silver many years ago, but it's doing particular. That would go really well with your
that would fit in wonderfully. I think in the back garden, which I got from Richard, is there one called Purple Heart? Something like that's purple and white anyway, whatever its name is. And I'll put the right name on screen for the video version. But
more good things being done with perennial cornflowers as well, isn't there? Which is lovely.
And actually that one was next to Lady Robra until Lady Robra died, and I haven't replanted with the cutting I did of Lady Robra, but it was lovely, the lilac and the purple and white together.
I think that is the thing, though. We should just say that, after you've got your plants in for 3 years, you ought to be taking cuttings, taking batches, just so you keep that genetic material, because they will eventually just run out of steam. They really will.
Who's that creeping about in the background?
My mum. Oh, hello, everybody. Alan, you look like you're come from Saint-Tropez or something.
What?
Your collar's open, you look all tanned, you look like you're on some sort of, I don't know, some sort of hot holiday.
Well, I didn't work with Joan Collins and not learn a few tricks,
And you're looking very floral, as are Alan's curtains. Lovely shirt, very floral curtains, beautiful. Love it.
I just can't get over how flippin' handsome you look, Alan.
You are gorgeous.
All right, enough of the ego massaging. Let's get down to the real stuff. Well, looking wonderful in her mum's house is Thordis Maria Fried.
you want to try that again?
Over in good old Sproston at her mother's house,